The Name 3, Part 4 of 4. We will call the opposition universal does not equal particular an opposition in the order of the lexis, which is for us Lego, I read or I choose as well, very precisely linked to this function of extraction, of choice of signifier, which is that on which, for the moment, the terrain, the rope bridge, on which we are in the process of advancing along. This is to distinguish it from the phasis, meaning something here that is offered as speech by which, yes or no, I commit myself in relation to the existence of this something that is brought into question by the initial lexis. And indeed you are going to see it in relation to whether I am going to be able to say all marks are vertical. Of course, with the first sector of the dial 1, but look at it also with the empty sector 4. If I say all marks are vertical, that means that when there is no vertical mark, there is no mark. At any rate, this is illustrated by the empty sector of the dial. Not only does the empty sector not contradict it, is not the contrary of the affirmation all marks are vertical, but it illustrates it. There is no mark that is not vertical in this sector of the dial. Hence, the first two sectors, 1 and 4, illustrate the universal affirmative. The universal negative is going to be illustrated by the two sectors to the right, 3 and 4. But this is something that is formulated by the following articulation. No mark is vertical. There is there, in these two sectors, no vertical mark. What should be noted is the sector they have in common, 4, covered by both these two propositions which, according to the formulation, the classic doctrine, would appear not to be able to be true at the same time. What are we going to find, following our circular movement that has thus far started so well, here O, as a formulation, just as here I, to indicate another two possible groupings 2 by 2 of the quadrants? Here I, we are going to see the truth of these two quadrants in an affirmative form. There are, I am saying it in a phasic way, I observe the existence of vertical marks, there are vertical marks, there are some vertical marks, that I can still either find here 1, or, amongst the valid cases, here 2. Here, if we are trying to define the distinction between the universal and the particular, we see which two sectors 2 and 3 relate to the particular enunciation O there. There are non-vertical marks, non nulli non verticales. There is not no mark that is not vertical. In the same way as earlier, we can't help but be stopped in our tracks for a moment by the ambiguity of this repetition of the negation. The not, ... not, the annulation of the first negation claimed by the second negation, is very far from necessarily being a yes. And this is something we will have to come back to in what follows. What does that mean? What is the interest for us in making use of such a device? Why am I trying to separate the dimensions of lexis and phasis for you? I'm going to tell you straight away without beating around the bush. I'm going to illustrate it. What can we say, we analysts? What does Freud teach us? Since its meaning, the meaning of what is called the universal proposition, has been completely lost, precisely since the formulation which could be given the chapter heading of the Eulerian or Venn diagram formulation, which comes to us as representing all the constituent functions of the syllogism by a series of little circles, either excluding each other, overlapping, intersecting, to put it another way and correctly speaking by extension, as opposed to the comprehension that would simply be distinguished by I don't know what inevitable way of comprehending, of understanding what? That the horse is white? What is there to understand? What we bring that renews the question is this. I mean that Freud promulgates, puts forward the formula which is the following. The Father is God, or all fathers are God. As a result, if we maintain this proposition at the universal level, that of there is no father but God, a statement which, on the other hand, in relation to existence, is in Freudian thought rather aufgehoben, rather left in suspense or even in radical doubt, it's about the order of the function that I have introduced with the name of the Father as something that, at one and the same time, has its universal value, but that you give back to yourself, to the other, the power to control whether there is a Father or not of this ilk. If there isn't, it is still true that the Father is God. To put it simply, the formula is only confirmed by the empty sector of the dial 4, by means of which, at the level of the phases, there are fathers who, more or less, fulfill the symbolic function that we have just proclaimed énoncé as such, as being that of the name of the Father. There are those that do, and there are those that do not. But that there would be those who do not, who would not in any case, which is represented by this sector 3, it's exactly the same thing that gives us the effect and the basis of the universal function of the name of the Father, 4, grouped with the sector in which there is nothing, 4, is precisely these two sectors, taken at the level of the lexis, that are found by reason of this, of being represented by this sector that complements the other one, that gives its full support to what we can proclaim as a universal affirmation. Let me illustrate it another way. Since just as well up to a certain point, the question of its value has been able to be posed, I am speaking in relation to traditional teaching, which must be what I brought in last time concerning the little I. Here, the scholars discuss, what are we going to say? The scholar, the one who teaches, must teach what? That which others have taught before him, meaning that he bases her himself on what? On that which has already been submitted to a certain lexis. What results from any lexis is precisely what is important to us in this instance, and at the level at which I am trying to get you to remember today, the letter. The scholar is lettered, in her his universal aspect. He is the one who bases her himself on the letter, at the level of any particular énoncé. We could then say that he could be half and half. He could be not all lettered. Subsequently, we could not say, all the same, that any scholar was unlettered. There would always be, in his case, a bit of a letter. It would nonetheless remain that, if by chance there was an angle from which we could say that there was, in the end, from a certain angle, something that could be characterized as giving a platform to a certain ignorance of the letter, this would then not prevent us from closing the circle and seeing that what it comes round to, and the foundation, if we can put it that way, of the universal definition of the scholar is very strictly within this. It's that the identity of the formula that the scholar is the one who identifies with the letter imposes, even demands, the comment that there could be illiterate scholars. The negative case 4, as the essential correlative of the definition of universality, is something that is profoundly hidden at the level of the primal lexis. This means something in the ambiguity of the particular support that we can give through the engagement of our speech to the name of the Father as such. The fact remains that we cannot do anything that, breathed in a human atmosphere, if I may express myself in this way, can, if we can say so, be considered to be entirely disengaged from the name of the Father, that even here, where there are nothing but fathers for whom the function of the Father is, if I may express myself in this way, one of pure perdition, the non-father father, the lost cause on the subject of which I ended my seminar last year, it is nevertheless through the function of this decline, in relation to a primary lexis, which is that of the name of the Father, that this particular category is judged. Man can only make it that either his affirmation or his negation, with everything this entails, that one there is my father, or that one there is his father, not hang entirely on a primary lexis of which, of course, that is not common sense, the signified of the Father that it concerns, but of something to which we are forced to give here its true basis, and which legitimates, even in the eyes of scholars, who, you see, would be in grave danger of being always left in some kind of suspense in relation to their real function, which, even from a scholar's perspective, must warrant what I'm trying to give you here, even at their level as scholars, an algorithmic basis for their subjective existence as such.